All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this quick little video, I really wanted to see where you stand on something, see which side of the fence you stand on, right? And I think it's interesting because there's not really a right or wrong answer at this point in time. It really just comes down to personal preference. Now, this idea kind of sparked up because I was talking to my buddy Manny, who's a big Jet fan, the other day. I think it was actually right before the preseason game. We were catching up. We were talking about, the strengths and the weaknesses of the Jets, what we like, what we don't like, concerning positions, stuff like that. Hard Knocks came up. Then the Robert Saleh speech where he, was talking about the offensive line, or I guess talking to the offensive line, came up. And he suggested, hey, did you happen to see Adam Schefter's tweet about longtime veteran, one of the best tackles of our generation, Jason Peters, intends to come back for his 20th NFL season? That is insane in and of itself. And I'm like, yeah, I did see that. And the first thing I really thought of was the Joe Douglas connection, right? Because Joe Douglas was in Philadelphia with Jason Peters, and we all know Jason Peters, right? A guy who's played left tackle, he's played right tackle, he's played on a bunch of different, he's actually played a little bit of guard too, but he's played on numerous teams, Bills, Eagles, Bears, most recently the Dallas Cowboys last season. He was an undrafted free agent back in 2004, and literally, I mean, like, this is like that. Jason Peters' NFL career needs to be talked about more, quite frankly. What was he? A six-time All-Pro player, two-time first team, 4-time second team. The guy was a Super Bowl champion, tons of playoff experience. Jason Peters is like the man, right? To go from an undrafted free agent, I mean, the success, the team success, the individual accolades, that's one thing. That is fantastic. Just looking at that stuff alone, tack on top of it that he's played what he intends to play in his 20th NFL season, that to me is deserving of an award, by itself. So it's absolutely crazy. There's some pros to it. There's some cons to it, and we're going to get into it. So before I do, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Are you in favor? Do you think Joe Douglas should pick up the phone and inquire about Jason Peters? Obviously, Mekhi Becton looked pretty good in the preseason game against the Buccaneers, which is awesome. But so far, I think, we've had a lot more question marks than bright spots. So this week is going to be huge, right? Can we can Saleh find the starting five, the starting five offensive linemen? We're going into the last preseason game of the offseason here with the Giants on Saturday at 6 o'clock. So, time's ticking here. Time is moving. We have to figure these things out. Could Jason Peters be a solid veteran option at this point, a cheap, solid veteran option that Joe Douglas knows in August here, potentially September? So I think when we take the standpoint of this is interesting, maybe this is something that we should look into, Joe Douglas should inquire about, I think the first thing that comes out is, again, the playoff experience, right? Him coming in at 41 years old to an offensive line with a lot of young guys, right? With Joe Tippmann, with Elijah Vera-Tucker, with Mekhi Becton, with Carter Warren. Like, there's a lot of younger players on this offensive line. He would not only just come in and, be a movable piece that you can kind of, again, move around the offensive line and plug specific vacancies, but he could also really, really dish out a ton of knowledge to the younger players, which I feel like goes a long way. I think the second big benefit is he would come in and instantly, when I say instantly, I literally mean instantly, have the utmost respect, utmost mutual respect between himself and Aaron Rodgers. I think that is, both of those guys have been elite at their positions, really throughout the same kind of timetable here. They both came into the league, right around that that early mid 2000s. I believe, again, Peters in 04, I believe Aaron Rodgers was, 05? So there's that instant respect, right? Right out of the gate, you have two former Super Bowl champion winners, two guys that have just absolutely dominated the NFL at their given positions. I think there would be a draw for Aaron Rodgers in that sense. Reason number three is I feel in a limited role, Jason Peters could still have success. He could still go out there and look formidable. What was it last season? He played in under 300 snaps, so super, super small sample size, but he only allowed one sack. for Dallas, but he did play right tackle, left tackle, and some guard as well. So, you know, in the event, I mean, we can just take a look at how these training camp practices have gone for the Jets. I mean, Tippmann's lining up at center, then he's moving over to left guard. Mekhi Becton, left tackle to right tackle. Billy Turner, Max Mitchell are swapping back and forth, I feel like, on a weekly basis. You know, we're still waiting on Dwayne Brown to come back. There's talks about AVT to right tackle. Like, there's a lot of positional movement. Jason Peters is a guy that could come in and say, hey, coach, where do you need me? I'll lace him up and give it my best, right? And at the same time, potentially have some success there. Now, I do know that it's the Bills. That's the team that's been linked to Jason Peters so far. So interesting thing to monitor there. But of course, you know, it's not like Jason Peters is like the perfect player at this point in time. At the end of the day, he is 41 years old. It's like, okay, the offense is really going to heavily rely on Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be turning 40 in December. Dwayne Brown, who's, you know, hopefully we can get him back this week from a shoulder injury. He's, what, 38, 39 years old. Now we're adding Jason Peters to the mix at 41. We're, like, these guys, like, we're putting a lot of responsibilities on some veterans that are up there in age. It's not like they're veterans at 34, 35. We're looking late 30s, early 40s. So we do have to factor that in. I also don't think that I guess I shouldn't say I don't think, but I don't know what the realistically speaking, if Jason Peters can come in and win a starting spot at this point in the offseason and just be the team's consistent starter from here on out. I think he would be a nice depth option towards like, hey, if we are 3 weeks into the season and we're struggling at a specific position, or in the event that somebody gets hurt, goes down with an injury, we have a guy in Peters that we can plug in, kind of, not necessarily like spot start duty, but, you know, if he needs to start 8, 9, 10 games, just kind of bounce it around, I think that would be the role, as opposed to like him being the go-to starter, you know, and if we lose him, we're absolutely screwed. Not really in a situation like that. So I think in the event that the Jets do sign him, it would be a great veteran backup piece. And lastly, the money situation. How much is Jason Peters going to be looking for? I don't know if Jason Peters would come out intend to play for his 20th season on a minimum type of deal. I just don't really see that happening. I feel like Peters would be seeking at the very least, a little bit more. Now, the Jets do have some flexibility here. We all know this. But they did go out and they brought in Dalvin Cook. They gave him a lot of money. But even with that, even with Cook's contract on the books, the Jets still have a lot of space. So if Jason Peters wants a cheap contract here, you know, there's a lot of connections that you can draw with, you know, the veteran leadership, the playoff success, the Joe Douglas ties, something. If I was Joe Douglas, I guess I'll leave it here. If I was Joe Douglas, I would pick up the phone and call. Not saying I would offer a deal immediately. I'm not saying he's off the table. Just pick up the phone and call. That's kind of where I stand on it, and I would love to hear where you guys stand on it as well. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it, and as always, go Jets.